finds only you, Lord. You are my best thought by day or by night.
So right from the beginning, let me just say there's a lot going on in my head right now because of added security stuff to this morning. So I haven't had the time to just peacefully and quietly run through the first bit of stuff like I normally do to keep me in line. So I'm a little bit all over the place mentally today, and if that shows up and you wonder why, that's just the way this morning is going to go. But I'm glad everyone's here, and I'm glad we're going to work through this. Let's review a little bit here. We've been looking at the first chapter of Peter, 2 Peter, and we've been going through the homily of verses 3 through 11, this opening encouragement. We've been narrowing it down thus far in verses 5 through 7, but the line of thought all the way from verse 5 through verse 9 can be summarized thus. Peter is offering a progressive list of godly traits for all of us to strive towards.
What's a homily?
Oh, a homily is like a very short, encouraging mini sermon.
Okay.
Most of the things that people call sermons today are actually just homilies. Catholics will very accurately call what their 15, 20-minute little lessons are as homilies. Most of the preaching in churches today are basically homilies that still get called preaching because that's the language that we use. It's really designed to be short, to the point, and encouraging towards a single goal. That's all a homily is. A sermon is different than that, although it has homiletic elements in it. Okay? Good question. Thank you for asking for clarity. All right, so we're striving towards these godly goals. He's laying out these godly goals in verses 5 through 7. And then 8 through 9 that we're going to try and get through today, depending on time, is written because Peter knows by striving towards these godly goals, we as Christians will not fall prey to the heretical inclinations, to self-indulgence and sin. 2 Peter is being written in light of a bunch of heretics infiltrating the churches and saying, hey, the grace of God is your excuse to do whatever you want. Because there's not going to be any consequences for your actions. There's not going to be judgment. Jesus isn't coming back. We'll get to this in more detail after we complete the homily and before we start introducing chapter 2. But that's the background and ideas. So he's opening with his homily to set up the contrast of saying, do not listen to them. They are stupid. You need to strive for the good and avoid the bad. And ultimately in chapters 2 and 3, it's going to be because judgment is coming, Christ is coming back, and judgment is going to fall on us all. Now, let's reread verses 5 through 7. We got through perseverance last week, but let's review a little bit of this. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control perseverance, to perseverance godliness, to godliness mutual affection, and to mutual affection love. So, just to recap a little bit, first off, make every effort. Bring all your energy to bear. Pursue, pursue, pursue. Do not stop pursuing this. Give all your thought and energy towards it. And we talked a little bit, does he start with faith as being the first quality, or is goodness the first quality? It's up in the air. I think faith is probably more inclined to say it's not the first quality. It's an assumed attribute of baptized believers. You were baptized because you expressed some initial faith. You want to grow in that initial faith, and the first thing that you want to add to that is goodness, which is this Greek word for virtue. Virtue was a big deal in Greek society. The philosophy of the Greek philosophers, as distinct and different as they were all designed to get to virtue. And when he says add to goodness or virtue knowledge, he's tapping into this Greek philosophical idea. You could not have virtue without knowledge in Greek thought. In the Old Testament, under wisdom literature like the book of Proverbs, Solomon and Hezekiah and the complete book of Proverbs put together is constantly telling the reader, gain knowledge, gain instruction. You need to understand certain things. But the purpose of that, as we talked about last week, was not so that you can have knowledge and instruction. It's so that you can pursue something greater, which is wisdom. Wisdom is, in the book of Proverbs, is probably the correct God intended application of understanding the world that He made and how to live and operate in it. To live and operate correctly in God's world, you need to understand God and how He constructed the world and why He did certain things, which are things you can in fact understand. And here, Peter is kind of saying the same thing in a different way. If you want to pursue goodness, virtue, godly living, that quality, you're going to need to understand certain things. And Peter doesn't tell us what those things are. And so I said, anything that helps you understand God, you need to hunt it down, you need to track it down, you need to struggle through the process of seeking and gaining knowledge and understanding. Then to that knowledge and understanding, of course, that's not the end goal. His list keeps going. Self-control is the ability to actually deny yourself certain things for the sake of, well, aiming towards that virtue, that goodness, the things that God wants. You're going to have to be able to say, I will not engage in this. This is what God wants. I will engage in that. And you're building character, godly character that Peter defines in verse 3 or 4 as access to the divine nature. Godliness. Jesus Christ exercised self-control. He got angry at the right things at the right times in the right ways. We get angry at the wrong things at the wrong times in the wrong ways, and we're learning to do that. And then self-control, if you control yourself long enough, the next step is perseverance, because it's not enough to just control yourself in your initial impulses one time. You got to keep doing it throughout life. You got to keep facing different circumstances that try to drive you to lose control and give up your will and just indulge. And when Peter's writing against these self-indulgent, sinful heretics, self-control is a very important quality. Perseverance in self-control, regardless of circumstances, is where we ended last week. So let's pick it up with perseverance and go through godliness and on through mutual affection and love here. We looked at this screen last week. Resilience is another perfectly justifiable term for perseverance. But as you're developing resilience, you've got self-control. And as you develop one quality, whatever it is, whatever you're focusing on, and for me, right now, it is the perseverance side of things. The self-control I'm pretty good at. The persevering, and this is why I'm skipping holidays, like I told y'all last night, because I lose control around holidays and overeat. So I gain weight heading into the winter, and I lose perseverance and self-control. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to skip holidays this year and not eat so that I build up some resilience going into the new year in 2026 and do better. But as you're gaining one quality, say self-control, it flows into perseverance or resilience. There's so many other qualities that you have to actually develop that will help. I like this picture because it brings out a sense of humor. It adds a sense of humor as a means of resilience. If you can laugh about things that should be laughed at, that can be laughed at, and you realize life is not just burdens and seriousness, it goes a long way to help you develop persevering through the stuff that's hard to laugh at or impossible to laugh at. The pain and the suffering that we all go through just in daily life. So I like this. I think this is a good visual representation of it. This is kind of the last slide I think we got to last week. Perseverance was a very valued trait in Christianity. It stems from Judaism, where people are being persecuted for their Judaism throughout the empire for hundreds of years under the Greek Empire, the Persian Empire. I mean, this goes back a ways, so it was a very developed trait. Peter's likely not tapping into this, meaning persevere in light of being persecuted. Peter's idea is persevere in godliness in light of the heretic's temptations to draw you away. In the face of bad, corrupt teachers who want to indulge in everything God says it's not good for you to do that, you need to persevere in your character, because if you do, in the face of temptation, and I like this picture because this representation of your mind can withstand the pressure from the outside. This picture kind of adds, when you add knowledge and self-control and you solidify yourself in the right things, understanding the right things, and your character and your actions move towards the right things, you can withstand the wrong things. And when you can withstand the wrong things, you've added to perseverance godliness. Genuine godliness as something as, here it's kind of the additional idea of saying you've made it through the temptations and the trials, you've persevered, endured, and you've developed resilience to being led astray. Your character is now formed, and it is now harder for you to be led back to those things. And Peter is building towards that. He wants you to be difficult to lead astray. If you get these lesser qualities of virtue, knowledge, self-control, and perseverance, you're building towards genuinely godly character. Let's talk about what that means. The NIV that I use is translated godliness, perseverance. Perseverance could also be translated loyal duty. That's kind of a more rendering. Sorry, I'm getting this wrong. Godliness in the NIV, I was right the first time. Godliness in the NIV could be translated as loyal duty, because this is more the idea. It's the same Greek word as in verse 3, Eusebian. About this, Gene Green, one of the main commentators that I'm using for 2 Peter, says this: one of the principal concerns of our author, Peter, is the development of Eusebia, loyal duty, in the lives of his readers. Given the final cataclysmic consummation of all things and the establishment of new heaven and new earth, the believer should be marked by a holy way of life and loyal duty in the present. Peter has previously declared that through the divine power, the believer has all that is needed for both life and loyal duty, godliness. That's really just the fundamental concern of 2 Peter. The development and fulfillment of duty, responsibility within the community of God, especially towards each other, which is where he's heading when you add perseverance to godliness, and to godliness, mutual affection. So just know that's where we're heading. This is not merely, and we talked about this last week, the virtues were not about yourself. The virtues were about social duty and responsibility. This is leaning back to this first term that the NIV translated goodness, virtue. Loyal duty is about the social realm as much as the first term that the NIV translates godliness is. The virtues were about the good and the needs of other people and doing them. Duty is understood as due reverence, loyalty, or honorable service towards someone to whom it is owed, whether it's God or, in Roman society, the gods, whether it's your parents, your relatives, maybe your ancestors, social institutions, more broadly. The Bible calls on us in places like Romans 13 to fulfill our obligations to the social institutions, pay taxes, render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Don't neglect the authorities. They don't bear the sword for nothing, which was capital punishment in the Roman society if you were a citizen. Or fellow citizens in general, this is all about giving what is properly owed to other people. Probably the more Jewish way of saying this is to say, other people are made in God's image. They're worthy of a baseline respect and honor. For despite all their behavior, they're an image bearer until God puts an end to them. Therefore, you owe them at least a baseline of it. But here, Peter's tapping into saying maybe a little bit more than just that baseline, because they're an image bearer. If you are in a relationship with someone, you have some relationship, whether it's just with the society around you, understand that relationship, have knowledge and instruction of that relationship, and fulfill that relationship by giving to them what is owed, because you expect respect to be paid to you at least a baseline understanding. So love your neighbor as you would love yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's that same basic idea said in a different way. Also, as I said last week, Peter in this opening homily is using Greek honor codes to construct this homily. He's not using Jewish rhetoric here. He's using Greek rhetoric, probably from the guy that's helping him write his letter that we don't know. Anyways, Given the overarching benefactions that have come from God, the believer is called to fulfill their duty towards Him. This is also Gene Green's statement, and he's tying these ideas together. God, the benevolent benefactor of verses 3 and 4, who's given the divine nature, His own nature, to His people so that they can live divine in the sense of godly lives here, means you actually have a responsibility to the society around you to fulfill it. Do you know what that society is? Could you fulfill it if somebody called you to account for it? Because, as Peter's going to go on, God is going to hold us all to account. So maybe you want to understand what your duties and responsibilities in your life to the people around you are and start working to fulfill those. This quality of godliness or loyal duty is about fulfilling responsibility to the people around you you have responsibility towards. Whatever it is. And there's room to negotiate this. My advice for working this out is start in your own household. Put your own house in order. Figure out the people that you spend the most time with and what your relationship to them is, spouses, parents to children, and figure out how you're going to fulfill that, whether it's just roommates to roommates. I live alone, so I get a little bit less, but I have pastoral duties to the congregation, so it works on that level as well. It's very broad, and everybody has to figure out where they stand in relation to these ideas. Where do you stand in relation to the people around you, and how are you going to fulfill your responsibilities as a worker at your job? Something like that. I heard a statistic this week that shocked me, that people who put in 10% more work and effort at work, for instance, they come in 15 minutes early and they leave 15 minutes later every day just to put in more effort, make 40% more than the people that just come and go on a regular schedule in their salary, because they stand out. They're fulfilling their duty more than they absolutely have to, and they actually get more reward out of that. Anyways, the virtuous duty points here, of the necessity of loyalty towards God and the churches in which the readers are already embedded. So Peter's writing this and saying, you guys that are reading this letter that I'm originally writing it to, you're already in situations that you need to be working to fulfill your loyalty towards other people. You're being tempted to deny those loyalties and just indulge yourselves. I don't want that. I want you to understand where you're at in life and fulfill those responsibilities, because it makes God look attractive. It sets you apart from other people who are just going through the motions and doing what they absolutely feel they have to do for whatever reasons. Embrace the responsibility. Embrace the duty towards other people. Let's think of this in the realm of churches. How quick are we to leave churches, to do the church shopping thing? And we leave it the slightest qualms. And when we talked about the book of Jude, we talked about grumblers and fault finders. And in our culture, we got a culture of grumblers and fault finders. The slightest person that upsets us in the church, and we leave, and what happens?
We find sinners elsewhere.
Yeah, all you can do is run to another church, and the same cycle will play out. We never really stop to think that maybe we're actually part of the problem. And here's the thing about grumblers and fault finders. I don't remember if I said this when we got to Jude. You're always going to be able to find fault in somebody. There's always fault to find. There's always something to grumble about. And so a lot of our grumbling and fault finding is going to be on some level justified. But to let that actually break our relationships apart is where it turns into a negative quality. We're overly critical of other people, and we don't see how we ourselves are part of the problem. And so when other people turn and grumble and find fault in us, and we don't know how to work it out, we don't know how to communicate and talk about what real issues are and what's really bothering us, relationships break apart. They corrode that way. In the church level, it's just like, well, fine, there's a church on every corner. In Missouri, I just learned this yesterday at the WMU thing that was happening here. The representative, Omar, from the Missouri Baptist Convention said, how many Baptist churches are there in the state of Missouri? And the number was a little over 1,700. So it's like if you wanted to be in a Baptist church, but that Baptist church, you're not happy with them for some reason, you just run off to the next Baptist church And it's like there's too many churches. In a real sense, we would be better off if, we cut that number in half and we forced people to deal with their problems with each other in congregations.
Well, we have this thing all backwards anyway. Church isn't about us.
Exactly.
Church is
Yeah.
about God.
And with the heretics, that's where Peter is going with this, and why I want to bring it up. Where Peter is going with the heretics later on is the heretics want it to be all about them. Our society wants it to be all about us. The highest virtue in our culture is self-fulfillment and self-expression.
I'm on the throne.
Yes, I'm on the throne. And what Peter is arguing for here in light of coming judgment is to say you should do the exact opposite of that. You should actually love and care for other people more than yourself. And I just wanted to mention this because when we do too much grumbling and fault finding, and when we take the freedom of 1,700 churches in our state to just go to church to church to church every time we have a problem, what happens is we run into conflict, we apportion blame, we find the fault in others, whether it's actually sinful or maybe it's just, some personalities rub up against each other. Some people it's just harder to get along with. That's not evil. That's not a sin. That's just a reality. But then we take that attitude to the next church and we find problems and they pop up in the next church, at which points we handle them the same way because we've avoided the real issue. Having a conversation with somebody and talking it out. And so you repeat the cycle. Well, let's just run to another church. Let's just go. And it shows the fault in you. And because we're heading towards judgment, all of us, you live your life that way and you're just constantly going from church to church every few years. What happens is you get to the throne of God, you have to stand in judgment, and it turns out you weren't living up to God's ideal because the second there was a problem that happened, you took the out. And that's not that's not solving your problems, that's avoiding your problems. And avoiding our problems is not virtuous. It is not godly. It perpetuates ungodliness, and we don't want to be that. And so what Peter is saying here is that true loyal duty sticks it out with endurance, with perseverance, with resilience, even to people that you're upset with, and strives forward to solve issues with mutual love and love, which is why these qualities coming up in verse 7 are higher than godliness. But you have to have the perseverance, the determination to stick it out in your own life, to stick towards godly qualities, and then come together with people that are also pursuing godly qualities, and you just butt heads about something, and that's not necessarily evil, but you handle it in a good, constructive way so that you can continue to relate in a church, continue to worship and have fellowship together, even if certain boundaries are in place to say, okay, we're going to go to different classes because we disagree on this, but we're going to stay in the same congregation, we're going to worship together because our God is greater than our disagreements. Wouldn't that be an insane idea for the church and Protestant world that has just split and split and split and split over all these ideas across time? Historically, Protestants have kind of a problem with the whole persevering with other people and godliness thing. Our theological distinctions shouldn't necessarily break us apart into different congregations pursuing different things. All right. Sorry?
You might learn something from each other.
Yeah, I mean, my idea is, obviously I have higher education in biblical studies. But my thing is, I can still be wrong. I still disagree with scholars all the time. Obviously, I've disagreed with Richard Bauckham about the idea that 2 Peter is not a testament and it's not pseudepigraphical, as we've talked about before. It happens. I still respect Bauckham as a Christian, as a scholar. I just disagree with them on a point. And that would not be enough for me if he was in this congregation to say, oh, you got to get out of here. We got to break fellowship with you and excommunicate you and stuff. But it happens. It happens. And I just wanted to bring that up because when we have this attitude that so-and-so caused a problem or rubbed us the wrong way or something, our first real instinct is not just to run. Our first real instinct is probably be just absorb the offense. I heard one pastor say it that way. Look, maybe they legitimately offended you. They offended Jesus, but the thing that you see with the apostles in light of Christ is that the first thing that they really do is not lash back out at them. It's not a fight or flight response. They're just like, okay, you disagree with me. Can we sit down and talk about it? What is the real issue here? And you just kind of absorb the offense. You get that they're upset. It doesn't make them right. It doesn't make you wrong, which is a part of our immature society. The person with the most feelings and the strongest feelings is right, regardless of the behavior itself. And we have to understand the difference between somebody saying something wrong, somebody saying something badly, miscommunicating, and it rubbing us the wrong way, and just trying to solve it and recommunicate. You know, the danger of my job in teaching, preaching, and just being a public communicator is that you run the risk of saying the right thing the wrong way every time. And it just naturally happens. Some people are going to hear things the wrong way. I'm going to present something poorly, and somebody's not going to appreciate it or like it or something. And then instead of coming and asking questions and giving me a chance to clarify or say, well, I didn't mean it that way. Was I communicating it that way? Let me work on my communication so that doesn't happen again. If somebody just internalizes that and holds a grudge, I don't have the chance to necessarily learn from it. Which is why one of the reasons I like recording my sermons and lessons and stuff. I can go back and rewatch them later down the line and think, ooh, okay, I didn't say that really well. I wonder how everybody else heard that. Let me go back into the lesson, find my notes, and find a different way to make that point so that I don't even think I'm coming across that way again. I was going to spend some time doing that yesterday, but some people up here wanted to actually do stuff for my birthday, like they're my friends. So I didn't get the chance to do that. Yes.
So in the situation exactly that you're talking about, you put these on YouTube. How do people that are not actually part of the congregation have the opportunity to have that constructive feedback? Because as you say, it also depends on the perspective of the receiving person in the duopoly of communication.
Yeah. One way would be the comment section.
That is
it is. Now, I will say in the year and a half that I've been here, that hasn't come up. In previous places, because I've always recorded and put stuff on there, I have used the comment section. Occasionally, when it becomes obvious that the comment section isn't going to do any good, I just message the person directly if it's available on that platform. It's not usually on YouTube. But if I can direct them, when I was in Gonzales, it was a small town. Everybody kind of knew everybody. I said, look, just come by the church on Thursday and we'll sit down and we'll talk about it for half an hour and we'll clarify. Because I'm clearly not getting what you're saying, and I probably said it badly. So let's talk about that. And so if I can get face to face with them, that is obviously the ideal. So much of that depends on the other person being willing. It depends on what kind of communication is available. If you find one form of communication, like this doesn't work, you just try and find another one to clarify. And it's a danger that everybody who does public speaking is going to have to do at some point. Just this week, I'm watching YouTube, and apparently some people were getting on to Jordan Peterson because of some interview or influence or conversation that he had where apparently he didn't do well. And this YouTube channel called Geeky Stoics was commenting on that. I didn't see it. I don't know what they're talking about, but they said, Jordan Peterson was pretty much a failure in that communication for whatever reason. And I was like, okay, interesting. But they were making this point, and they were saying, but this is what happens when you communicate publicly all the time. And they talked about C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis had this interaction with an atheist where the atheist basically smacked him down, and C.S. Lewis felt like an absolute failure and wanted to give up teaching in public communication as an apologist for Christ at that point. But thank God that he didn't, because this was before he ever wrote Chronicles of Narnia or anything. And if I remember correctly, it was either on a radio program or a TV show that he had this public failure. You risk public failure when you pursue public things and you put that up there. I am willing to risk the miscommunication, as I think it's just going to happen anyways, in order to actually pursue something greater for the community. And we'll handle the miscommunications case-by-case basis as they come up. And I learned just as much from those about what not to say or how not to say it in some text situations. But I also travel a lot all over the country. So I learned, grow up in Texas, moved to Colorado, and learned a different form of communication because of that. I got German from my mom's side, where communicating sternly and directly was the norm in my grandparents' house. And so people rolling over their feelings and communicating around the actual issue doesn't help me, because I'm usually like just define the problem kind of person, as I grew up with under the influence of my grandfather in particular. So it's just, a lot of it is just natural people growing up in different situations. We need to learn and integrate different forms of communication, which is why it's not always the best for me to do the teaching, because I teach one way with one set of skills and tools. Carla does it a different way. And they're both perfectly legitimate, and they both help communicate different ideas. One is not inherently superior to the other, just as one person is not inherently superior to the other. And it's this distinction between us all coming together and working together towards the ultimate good that is going to do the most good in building us each up. Which should happen as we're building each other up. We should actually get towards some mutual affection. Any readers of the Stormlight Archives in here? Oh, come on, people. I'm trying to get your mom to read them, actually, because they're so good. So I got Jared and Steffo reading it, but Bridge 4 is this group. This is Kaladin Stormblessed, and he's sentenced in the first book as a deserter from his military, basically sold into slavery, and said, you're going to go run these bridge crews. And the bridge crews are literal like groups of 50 guys holding a bridge, running for miles to the enemy's fortress, and then they have to lay down the bridges and let the enemy attack and kill them. And he's trying to desperately save the men under his charge, not realizing that they're actually supposed to die. Like they're sold into slavery specifically for this purpose. Go run at the enemy and die. And he's a trained soldier trying to do everything to keep them alive. It's really good, but you have to actually you have to, it's great character development, but you actually have to like epic high fantasy that happens on another world, has no real relationship to reality, except for the fact that these are human characters going through human things. But in the process of trying to save them and losing, the survivors form a bond. And this mutual affection, here, this language is more fraternal love or brotherly love. If you've ever watched HBO's Band of Brothers, that's the imagery. People, not just men, but people who go through their problems and persevere through their problems together naturally develop an affinity for each other, because you're suffering and surviving, hopefully, things together. And even if you don't survive, you suffer with them to the end. And that is the idea of the mutual affection. Do we have relationships like that here in our church? At a basic level, it describes familial love extended to those outside the family unit. And that's the brotherly love. When you love somebody like a brother or a sister, despite the fact that they're not blood. That's the idea. But in context of developing perseverance and godliness, that's where I get the imagery of war as a means of binding people together, because it's kind of the fastest way to do it. Trauma bonding, right? Isn't that what they call it? I'm not saying that's the way you need to do it, but I hear a lot about trauma bonding these days. It is far greater than mere friendship. It is a stronger bond. And most importantly, it's a mark of corporate solidarity. It's when you're going to get over yourself and sacrifice yourself enough to actually be part of a group and do what the group is doing, even if that's not necessarily your choice. Like people dragging me out on my birthday. You had no idea when you did this that I was going to throw this back in your face for fun. No, I'm very appreciative. It was a good time. We beat the escape room in 45 minutes, like right at 45 minutes. Disarmed a nuclear missile in record time and caught the bad guy, the Silver Wolf. Yeah.
There are not specific lights and charts to tell me when I'm doing it correctly. I do not think I did.
So that's the picture. We disarmed a nuclear bomb as a mark of corporate solidarity. Nobody did anything on their own. We were all working on separate puzzles, and because of that, we won. in pretty good time. Now, as a mark of corporate solidarity, it stands as the opposite of the heretical apostates, my nickname for the heretics here in 2 Peter. The heretical apostates who are attempting to lead people away from the community by self-serving ideas and indulging of their every little desire and whim. So if you're going to indulge yourself, you know what? You're going to have bad relationships. Bad relationships, corporate solidarity, mutual affection in godliness is designed to function, and functions best when we sacrifice our own wills and our own desires for what the group is doing. Now, that's not to say that all the time the group decides to do the right thing. This group of heretics is doing the wrong thing. You don't want to sacrifice your own godliness to go off and do the wrong thing. So for that, you need to add knowledge and instruction into your godliness, right? You need to know what the right and the wrong thing actually is according to God's standards and teachings so that you can pursue it and then form relationships with the people around you that are also actively pursuing it. And because it's never going to be easy, binding yourself together in that struggle to pursue it and keep on pursuing it in the face of the temptations to lead the way is going to build relationships that will last beyond a lifetime, which is a great theme of the legend of Korra. You know, Korra, the reincarnation of Avatar Aang, in this show, runs into friends from her previous life. And they talk about this in both series. Can friendships transcend a lifetime? Well, when you have a God who's going to raise you from the dead and give you eternal life, they can literally last eternity. So yes, they can. But right here and now, we have to be working on these things. So in the face of the pressure to be pulled apart from each other by pursuing our own desires, and apart from ultimately the Messiah himself, the church must endure that pressure to renew and reinforce their commitments and their bonds to one another. You're not just committing back to the Lord, you're recommitting to the church and to the people within it. At least we're supposed to be. Because if we do that, we can become stronger in the end than we were before the heretical apostates showed up. That's the point of what Peter is writing towards. You can kick them out, you can deal with them, they can get out of your church, and your church can actually be stronger for them having come in and you facing this challenge. Are you willing to face that challenge? Because if you do and you overcome and you form these bonds and these relationships like Bridge 4 here, you get to the real goal, the final attribute here, love. Add to mutual affections or brotherly love, add love. So what's the difference between mutual love, brotherly love, and love? Love here, as you might know the term because it's very preachable from pulpits, this word is agape. The phrase refers to a cognitive emotion in which the well-being of another is placed above itself. One of the ways that Catholics to this day, I think correctly, speak of virtue and love is willing the good of the other. I think that's a good, solid, short definition. Willing the good of the other. And this cognitive emotion is to say, one, you feel things for the other person, sure. But also the cognitive aspect. You've thought it through and you understand the good, and now you want the good for your sibling, your brother, your sister. You want the good. And your will in love is to go out and pursue the good of that person. It is not passive. It doesn't sit around waiting and hoping for something good to happen to another person. It is active. It goes out and actually pursues what is going to be best for someone else. So the person who loves in the agape way goes out of their way to make good things happen for the beloved. So basically, agape love is the highest virtue here because it's sacrificial love. That's not always what the term agape means, and I'm throwing this out there because a lot of the times from pulpits, people and preachers see the word agape in Greek and they think, oh, it's automatically meaning sacrificial love. More often than not, yes, but sometimes that's not the only implication, or at least not the emphasis. Here it is. Peter wants sacrificial love out of the community. Kind of like how I sacrificed my Friday night to go out with you people. I'm going to throw this in your face for a year, so get used to it. Good point. Okay, so it's the accumulation of Peter's list because going from faith in a basic sense to the ultimate goal of love, every virtue and every knowledge is is a stepping stone. The godliness, the perseverance. It's all a stepping stone towards sacrificial love. This is a picture of the Good Samaritan helping the Jew who's been beaten and robbed right here. And this is what I want to say about sacrificial love. Self-love is popular. Sacrificial love is biblical. I just Googled the term love, and this came up. And I thought this was a very good point, because this is essentially Peter's point. The heretics are all about the self-love. They want what's going to make them happy in the moment. They are, we'll get to this next week because we're running out of time, nearsighted and blind. They have no vision for anything beyond their next fun task or enjoyment. So they don't sacrifice anything for their future. They indulge now in what they want, and that's self-love. And everybody in our culture is essentially into the self-love. It's a very popular thing. Nobody's really into the sacrificial love, because maybe I won't get what I want if I have to sacrifice something for others. But if you have mutual affection, brotherly love for somebody in your life, you will sacrifice for them and make this the ultimate goal. So, great love prompts great sacrifice. It's what love does. Dr. Michael B. I don't know who that is. Again, I just Googled it and this is what come up. And I think it's really, really good. Great love prompts great sacrifice. It's what love does. And of course, Jesus offering himself up for sinners is the fullest expression of this love. Our God does not just call us to sacrificial love. He calls us to be the benefactors of his sacrificial love so that we become benefactors. Because God is described as the benefactor from whom his people gain all of these abilities in knowing the Messiah, verses 2 and 3 of 2 Peter. Peter has in mind something of the idea that Christians are to become living benefactors to others as God himself has been to them. This is the conclusion of what Peter ultimately wants to get, and the heretics are the exact opposite of it. You're benefacting from God's beneficence, his goodness, his love towards you. Are you sitting around squandering it all on yourself? Or are you, like his promises to Abraham, are you being a blessing to other people? Are you embodying blessings towards those around you? Or are you like the Dead Sea, gathering it up inside yourself without it running anywhere else, so that you cannot actually actively grow anything in it? So we come to the end here, and we've just got to ask ourselves these questions. What are we sacrificing for other people? Time, attention, affection. These are the things that we're going to have to give up. Hey, I just want to sit down and watch my favorite show. Okay, well, I really need to stop and talk to you about an important issue. Okay, great. The show can wait. It's going to be there. It can wait half an hour. It can wait 60 minutes. It can wait till tomorrow. If you were addicted to the next thrill, then maybe you can't turn it off, but you're going to have to learn. Can you sacrifice eating fruits and vegetables in order to lose weight, Chuck? The answer is no. But, building these early, let's just go back to the slide that has them all here. And let me ask these questions with the visual aid. These early virtues, which are social in nature, and then these middle ones, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, and godliness, start with social virtues. These are more personal, but they, of course, come back to the social in the end. So Peter is kind of squishing the things that we need to develop personally in light of social interactions and build the church and the community around. So which of these are you currently working on? For me, it's the perseverance one. I'm pretty good at the knowledge and the self-control. I want the perseverance to fill up the godliness so that mutual affection rises up out of me, and then more sacrificial love comes out. And it's not really a straight line. Peter here is not going in order necessarily, but he does see a flow of thought that if you can work on one in an order, you're ultimately going to build towards sacrificial love. You parents sacrifice all sorts of things for your kids. It's just what you do because you love your kids. Each and every one of us, especially those without kids, needs to think, what do I need to sacrifice for the good of another person? What do you need to sacrifice in your own life to build yourself up in a way that you actually turn your affections towards other people? And that's not selfish. There is a component where we have to love and relate to ourselves, We have to live with ourselves. And so the work that we do kind of to gain self-control, to gain understanding and perseverance is beneficial to us personally, but ultimately if it does not extend to other people, it's worthless.